Trick or treat.
It's really bright behind me. Can I pull this shade down?
Yeah, I don't care. Hey, so Patty got me, if you can't see me, Patty got me some new headphones. I think they're made for little kids, but they fit fine. And they have devil horns on, light up devil horns on the top.
Yep, they're little kid headphones. She looks super cute.
They're pretty spectacular.
And if you hear it, so what's weird is we did a podcast a couple weeks ago, and we played a song in the beginning of it, the podcast about forgiveness, and it was the what's his name?
It all got cut out.
Yeah, we cut it all out because we
copyrights
there was that, but also nobody could hear it. So I guess we have really good mics. But right now there's a really loud droning noise, because we're sitting in the RV and it's super hot out, so we have the AC running and it's loud in here. So if you hear that noise, we apologize, but we're not shutting it off. And there's a good chance you might not hear it at all, so we'll just cut this apology out too.
Yeah, I don't think you can hear it. I mean, we just listened to it and I couldn't. We just did a practice run. I couldn't hear it.
Yeah, but I was like making out with the microphone then. And maybe I might, if I come back and go forward and come back and go forward, maybe the droning slips in.
Oh, well, you should just stay forward then.
Sounds dirty.
Lean in.
So we wanted to talk, we learned some really cool shit about jealousy recently. And there's a chapter.
Working on the book.
Yeah. Sam's been doing massive amounts of research to add a they say to our book, where she challenged herself to go out and find out if the tips that we put in our book were worthy of, if there's any science to back any of the shit that we say up. It's like, it's great that this is our opinion, but have there ever been any studies done that support these kinds of theories, right?
Yep. And we found that there are a few things in there that don't and aren't. And it's interesting too about science, right? Like, only in the last 20 years have they studied any positive psychology. That's really when that started to catch on. So things like forgiveness, and most of psychology was just like, if you had a problem, you had a psychological issue, then that got studied a lot. But if things were going well, nothing got studied until just recently. So, things like, forgiveness and gratitude and those kinds of things.
About what's right about what's right.
Exactly. They didn't really study that till just recently. But it's great. There is a ton of research out there. Although I still will say, like, things like affirmations, which we talk about in the book, there's still not a lot of research on that, except for with regards to sports people. Anyway, it's fascinating what and how the research takes you down these different
what do you mean there's not research
pathways
out there? There's a whole movie called The Secret.
Yeah, but that's not based on scientific research.
Yes, huh?
No.
It's real. That shit's real.
I believe it's real too, but scientifically they can't. There's no research to support it.
Proven track record trumps science every time. That's what I say.
Okay. Everybody's entitled to their opinion.
That was a joke. Science is about finding proven track records and then analyzing the data, I think.
It's kind of about not just finding them, but creating them.
Anyway, Sam got way into this. She did the research for the entire book, and I did research for jealousy because she doesn't have any, and she thought it was a dumb chapter anyway.
I don't think it's a dumb chapter. I just can't relate that well.
Yeah. Well, one of the issues we ran into is rereading the book to go out and find scientific evidence to support some of the things that we have in there. We realized that we barely even touched on half of the subjects in there. So the good news is now you can pick up a revised edition of our book, and you
which
can
we're going to rename. We're going to rename it.
Yeah, you can find out exactly how to dig as deep as you want on any of those theories, because there's freaking like 10 pages of bibliography added to the book now.
Yeah, probably so. Anyway. I think there's over 150 references, which isn't that many for how long the book is, but for us not technically being scientists, I think it's pretty good.
I have 9 references alone in my own chapter, which is a lot for me. And
Yeah. Good job, honey.
And of course, because I work so hard on one chapter and put in about 1/100th of the time Sam did, I thought we should podcast about my chapter.
So go.
Yay!
Yay!
Jealousy.
So I wanted to start with envy because I was thinking, we were just talking to our son Jacob, and we were talking about jealousy, and he was saying, "Well, you have jealousy." I said, "No, I don't have jealousy because this is something kind of weird about me. I don't really feel jealousy, but I do have envy. Where I see someone's doing something I want to do, or whatever, has something I want to have, which is kind of rare, and then I might be envious, and that can be a very beautiful emotion.
It's the 7 deadly sin.
Envy?
Yeah.
I think it can be very motivating, envy. So there's like I differentiate, but well, according to Hale.
Why do you care? You're wearing devil ears. Horns. Sorry. Anyway.
They're kind of weird how they have those spots, kind of like Minnie Mouse or something, but with pointies.
Those are the LED lights. They're light up.
Oh.
Those are the bulbs. Anyway, so envy is a different animal altogether.
Yeah, it's just like the positive side.
You want what somebody else has, typically, is what envy is.
Whereas, yeah, but like it could be very, like I said, I think that could be really motivating.
I know, but it's not jealousy.
No. So I just wanted to talk about the nice version of jealousy. Now you go into the bad.
Well, jealousy is not.
I shouldn't say bad.
I'm gonna give you several examples of it, but envy and jealousy are 2 completely different things in my mind. The people misuse the word jealousy, jealous, but what they really mean is envious. So they're just not the same. So now we got that cleared up.
Yep.
There's multiple kinds of jealousy.
Like, are you jealous of this beer I'm drinking?
Yeah,
right now?
The ones we are most interested in, obviously, are relationship jealousy, and the 2 that are most common to a large extent in relationship jealousy is like one of them is, I don't have it all, but it's more about you look to my girlfriend, I'm going to kick your ass, that kind of jealousy. And honestly, some of the research we read about, as bad as that kind of behavior is, in my opinion, that sometimes it helps relationships because, some women are kind of turned on by that, I guess, is what I read, or they think that it's like a romantic gesture or something. I mean, maybe.
Well, I think that I do like it when I feel like you're protective of me sometimes.
Yeah, but I don't go full trailer park.
No, you've never gone full trailer park. When you get pissed off, you just ignore me.
Yeah. I just don't like seeing you being taken advantage of now, because you're pretty trusting.
But how can you take advantage of somebody if you're just having a conversation?
You can't. But
okay.
It bugs me when I know people are feeding you a line of shit and you buy it hook, line, and sinker, but it doesn't really hurt anybody, so I guess it doesn't matter.
Yeah, they probably just need the attention.
There you go. Anyway, the kind of jealousy that do
you remember what that kind of jealousy is called?
Well, it's technically called romantic jealousy.
Oh.
And there's action based and cognitive based. That one's more of an action based. The cognitive based is basically it's called anxious anxiety, or
no, it's called anxious attachment. Anxious anxiety is the same word. That's like saying
I had a long day.
Anxious.
Leave me alone. God, you're so mean to me. I'm quitting our podcast. You have to say you're sorry.
I'm sorry.
All right. I'll keep going.
See how easy that was? Forgiveness. That's my favorite topic.
Anyway, anxious anxiety. The anxious attachment.
I'm sorry. I'm the apologizer. Do you forgive me?
What?
Do you forgive me?
Honey, I'm in the middle of a sentence.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was talking about the anxiously attached, or attachment anxiety as it's called, and that's more about people putting a lot of self-worth into their own relationship, and then
So talk about that a little bit. Explain that. I get what you're saying, but not everybody might.
So you place your own self-worth and value on the strength of your relationship, right? And a lot of the people that, which is bad, because we talk about that in chapter 1 of our book and on almost all of our podcasts about self-love and being self-full. And
and there is part, I mean, I think for anybody in a relationship, there's part of your identity that's tied to being a wife or a husband or a girlfriend or a boyfriend. And so I can see how you could take that, and I don't think that's bad, but I can see how that can be taken to an extreme where it would maybe not be a great thing.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about.
And
right?
everybody has an investment in their relationship and they want it to work out. And a lot of us are bummed out or depressed or whatever when we're having problems and we can't seem to get on top of them or whatever. And that's fine. But when we're talking about jealousy specifically and the anxiously attached in jealousy, it's how it manifests itself, right? So this low self-worth that you have, basically what it is you put your significant other up on a pedestal, kind of. In other words, you've got them valued yay high, right? They're up here, but then you're gonna have a low self-worth, so you're down here, and you're constantly telling yourself maybe you're not worthy of their love or whatever it is, and that they might cheat on you, and it's usually fueled very strongly by separation. So when one person is traveling or gone to work all the time, or when you're apart, the anxiously attached typically they start
freaking out.
And it's all cognitive based. In other words, it's all about their own perception, and their perception is well, what if they're, and this is what I went through in the first 10 years of our marriage, because Sam was traveling a lot for work, and she was always working with other men, and they were staying in the same hotel, working until 2-3 in the morning,
or all night
always
long.
in other countries or other states, and she's gone 2 weeks at a time. And so and then a day would go by and she didn't call or something, and then I'd be being a person who is suffering from that, I'd be like, oh great, I wonder if she's hooking up with that guy. I mean, he makes a lot more money than I do, and blah blah blah, and you know what I mean. So I've got her on a pedestal, I've got a little bit of low self-worth, and I'm putting whoever else she's with, I'm basically creating my own rival in my own head. And then but it can really, I didn't get really bad with it. I definitely had peaks and valleys with it, but some people get super bad. They start going through emails, they start going through purses, they start it's super accusatory, right? And they're reading their Facebook pages and where were you last night, and what time did you get in, and who are you with, and
why are you wearing that outfit?
Yeah, it can get really bad, and we've all seen it, right? So and what I read about as far as that goes is I could not find anything to support that kind of behavior is ever good for your relationship. Almost all other kinds of jealousy, it's like, well, this guy was flirting with her and I got jealous, but it made me realize that I hadn't been paying that much attention to her. So there's certain kinds of jealousy that can actually help a relationship. And
there's some silver lining to some of the jealousy, but not
the anxiously attached. It puts massive amounts of pressure on your relationship, because the one person is placing their self-worth and square on the other person's shoulders, and then there's something I read that Sam made me rewrite or take out that really kind of hit home with me about it. Was
plagiarized it, so that's why we have to rewrite it.
I put it in quotes.
No, you didn't put it in quotes.
Yes,
you put a footnote. That's different.
Well, you said it wasn't because of that. You said it wasn't clear.
Yeah, but I couldn't quite understand what it was trying to say.
Sam would come home from being gone for 2 weeks, and she would be super tired, because she'd been working 15 hours a day,
and flying to different cities in the same day, and
I'd be like, well, you didn't call me twice, and you came home and you gave me a kiss on the cheek and went up to bed. You know what I mean? So it's almost like and then that would make me spin out also, because I'd be like, well, something has to be going on, because she wasn't that excited to see me. So regardless of whether anything was going on or not, and regardless of, when she came home, there was like some ambiguity to her affection, right? And that ambiguity would just open the door for me for more and more, and basically all it would do is just push her further away. So what happens is you build up this massive amount of distrust for no reason. It's all stories, basically, right? And then because I'm distrusting you,
then I'm like, well, fuck, I'm getting accused of all this bad behavior anyway, like, and I have zero control over what you're thinking about and how you're thinking about it, no matter how many times I tell you no.
But
everything's okay.
It creates a vicious cycle of trust, because
yeah,
now you don't really trust me to behave properly in our relationship, right? You're like, I can't count on this guy.
Well, yeah, and it just didn't, again, like, because you didn't trust me, I couldn't, and I felt like I had zero control over that.
If I can't count on you to trust me, why should I care if you trust me or not?
Yeah, well, that's right. Then it's sort of like, I started to not care.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I'm getting accused of it already, then
anyway,
might as well get in there.
The anxiously attached, and I know a lot of people that are like this. I was like that. I probably still have some of it deep down, because I think that sometimes, but I just squash it. I have a process where I'm like, this isn't real. What are you doing? Stop. You've learned about this. Stop behaving like an asshole.
Because that's a form of rumination, right? Which is a thing, like, that's definitely something that happens during jealousy. Rumination
is a new word we learned also, which is basically dwelling on shit and constantly telling yourself stories that may or may not be true. And
which pulls you right out of the present moment, which may be why you love the present moment so much.
And here's the beauty of it. Because through the research, we've learned that behaving like this only leads to
bad things.
A worse place, right? And inevitably to the end of your relationship, really. The only reason that people behave that way is because they're afraid of losing somebody, right? That's it. They're afraid of losing them. They've placed a lot of self-worth on that person. They value that person higher than themselves. They're scared to death that they lose them. They don't know that they deserve that person. And in the end, they get exactly what they were most worried about.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It is the actual epitome of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And our message to everybody out there is don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
It's real bad.
Did you read anything about how people can combat that?
Combat it? Learn about it, I think. I mean, for me, and maybe, I don't know how everybody else does it, but for me, if I learn something and I can get out, put it on the table, give it a name, spin it over, look at it, and be like, oh,
I don't want that.
That's what that is. Wow, that's really stupid. And I carry that around. Ugh. It's like a really ugly fanny pack. I mean,
that one you were trying to buy me the other day?
Yeah. Do you want your friends to see you walking around with a really stupid looking fanny pack on? I mean, just take it off. Right? You can put it in your closet, and maybe, when you're alone, you can take it out and put it on and parade around in the bedroom with it, but then put it away again. Don't let anybody see that shit. It's not beneficial. And if it's driving you absolutely nuts and you feel like you can't control it, you got to find somebody to talk through it with, because it does not and will not and cannot ever help your relationship.
Yeah, they have something called cognitive it's either cognitive behavioral or behavioral cognitive therapy that helps. It's just the idea that you start to switch your thoughts to change your behavior. And I would imagine that kind of therapy would be really helpful if you have anxious attachment.
Yeah.
And it's not anything you really have. You can just buy a book about, like, I just bought a book about it. And that was how I started to work on my panic attacks when I was having those.
The perfect solution, though, is go back to chapter 1 and reread it, because, and we keep saying that like everybody's read our book, but I know most of you haven't, because we've only sold.
Okay, stop. Chapter 1's all about self-love, and we're big.
You go back.
If we're teaching anything, if we can only get to pick one thing that we're going to teach, we both always pick self-love.
Yeah. And honestly, that's really what it comes down to. So if I catch myself ever thinking that way, I'm like, whoa, I like to make fun of myself sometimes. You're not supposed to do that either. You're supposed to build yourself up from the inside out. But I'm like, oh, who's the guy over there who has, low self-worth? Build yourself back up, because at the end of the day, I'm awesome. Sam's lucky to have me.
Yes, this is true.
And when I get to that point, she can run off with whoever she wants. She can do whatever she wants on that trip. But actually, we don't really have this issue anymore. We haven't for a long time, because I recognized during the year we were apart what I was doing, and knew it was something I had to fix about myself. So
yeah, actually, if that hadn't gotten fixed, I could never be with you. I mean, that's the truth. I can't. It feels so smothering to have someone constantly. I couldn't have been with you either. You were, in my mind, you were a cheating hua running around the world, gallivanting off with all these other men. Well, and I mean, I'm gonna.
There's the stories.
It's true. I mean, the truth is, I was running around the world, and I was with other men, and I did have some emotional affairs.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I was emotionally attached to a lot of those guys.
You weren't 100% without fault, and there was some.
Absolutely not. I also can. Again, you have to take responsibility for the part that you're responsible for.
And there are red flags, but
I will say though that long before any emotional affairs started to even bud, I was already being accused of full-on cheating.
Not full on. You were being suspiciously questioned.
Okay, but that felt like being accused of cheating.
I know. So, if I had not, I basically pushed you. The way I look at it is my own suspicions and insecurity probably made all those other people look that much more attractive. I mean, like I said, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
So if you're just at home being the man, all those other guys look like chumps, and they were actually at the end of the day, to a T, every fucking one of them, chumps.
Yep.
Good thing I got over that jealousy. Anyway,
yeah. So can you talk about how you did that? I mean, you brushed through it a little bit, but can you go into more depth about how you really did that? Because this is getting over jealousy and figuring out how to stop ruminating over bad things. This is not an easy thing that you transformed in just a year. It's time.
I don't know that it was a year. It was probably about 8 months, because the first 4 months everything was your fault and I was real mad. But yeah, just recognizing something, a behavior about yourself that that you really, really do not like it's not difficult to change to me. I mean, it's
actually, you know what? What's funny too is I've been reading a lot about, you remember so it used to be that I had a horrible, horrible temper.
Horrible what?
Temper.
Sorry, the air conditioning's real loud.
Remember my grandfather had a horrible temper, and
her last name's their
last name was Temple. So Patty started calling my tantrums temple tantrums.
Yeah, because I'd seen her mom have them before too, and her sisters, and so I thought, it's kind of coming from the Temple side of the family.
Yeah, and that was true, because my dad wasn't like that at all. So yeah, I'd have these horrible tantrums, and unfortunately, they were very effective. They were effective in my relationships, in that I could get kind of what I wanted by having tantrums, and in business, I think it just scared people, and that also made me really effective. And so I had this idea that my tantrums were acceptable because they were effective. They were getting the results I wanted.
Yep. She could go to 0 to bitch in about 4.1 seconds. And
probably
then
less.
People would do shit just because, I mean, honestly, we're in a different age now. People are a little bit more in the last 20 years, especially, people are way more
sensitive.
Yeah.
We have emotional intelligence as a thing that exists, which didn't exist.
But screaming at somebody to get shit done used to be kind of the norm. So
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And my grandfather was extremely successful, and he just yelled at people constantly. In fact, I'm just going to tell a weird story, but he used to own part of a television station, and when I was young, like, having one TV was nobody had more than one TV. Did you growing up?
We had a little black and white one in the kitchen, so we had two.
So
and then we had this really old beater downstairs that you could never get a picture on, but we could play Pong on it. So
so that was useful. So actually you had 3 TVs. Wow.
Yeah, we were friggin' high dollar.
So in my grandfather's house, my grandma and grandpa's house, there was one, the den, they called it the den, and it had 3 TVs, all in like one bookcase, like one on top of the other, so that he could watch so there were 3 main stations. This is how long ago it was. We had 3 main television stations, and then maybe there were like 2 or 3 others. Now, how many are there? Like hundreds. But anyway.
There was ABC, CBS, and NBC,
Yeah.
and then PBS. That's about it.
PBS, yeah. So he was in charge of NBC in Utah, and he would watch the news. The news came on for every station at the same time. That might still happen. I don't know. And he would watch the news, and he would be on the phone the entire time screaming, "Fix this coat. There's a wrinkle in Mark's coat. You need to turn the lighting. I don't like, tell Barbara to quit smiling like that. She looks like a Cheshire cat." Like, he just screamed the entire time. And he was super successful. He had made millions back in the day when that was, like, that was a lot of money.
What's the point?
Well, the point is that I watched him do that.
Yeah.
And thought, oh, that's how you get successful.
That's true. That's true.
You look at people, and you're very critical, and you're very demanding, and you yell a lot, and that's what success looks like.
Well, plus your dad, who was also pretty successful, would very even keeled, very low key, rarely ever raised his voice, but when he did,
it was scary.
Yeah, and he would from time to time to get shit
did.
done. So it was another effective thing that you learned. Anyway. You brought that into your relationship. I brought that into my relationship, which wasn't, and as a parent, that was awful. My poor kids, God. Like, if I could just raise our kids again, I feel like I'm really ready. I want our kids to have kids so that we can be grandparents, because I think I'm going to be an amazing grandma. Yeah.
And I want to be grandma now.
Ready. I am my own grandpa. I love that song. The end of the day.
Do you want to sing it?
I don't remember the words. At the end of
my own grandpa.
End of the day, what we really wanted to say was jealousy, especially anxious attachment, is real bad. And if you catch yourself going down that road, recognize that it's mostly all about you, and that you can fix it. You can fix it pretty easily by focusing on things that build up your own self-worth.
Yeah, I didn't even really get to, the reason I was telling all those stories is because I read a book, actually it was Crucial Conversations. I read Crucial Conversations, and I read about how much more successful people were at communicating when they didn't scream at each other, and techniques to control your anger, which I have still, but had worse then. And I realized it wasn't as effective because I was seeing that in my children and in you and in my other relationships. And I just made the decision to not have tantrums anymore.
So we were talking about...
It was like a light switch, because we were talking about how you did it. Mm-hmm. And I said, and then I probably interrupted and said, well, that's how I did. That's how I got over having tantrums. I literally decided one day not to have them anymore.
Yeah.
Because they're not effective. It doesn't mean I don't still get angry. I for sure get angry a lot. I just don't ever get crazy and scream at people and throw things and do the shit that I used to do. I don't behave that way anymore.
And anxious anxiety and jealousy is
anxious attachment.
God damn it. What is my problem today?
Anxious. Maybe you have anxiety.
The double A of jealousy is a is it's like the trifecta. It's when you can recognize something about yourself that you don't like about yourself, right? So it makes you feel bad, and it's a bit embarrassing. It makes the other person feel bad, and it's destructive to your relationship.
Boom.
The trifecta. You're batting for the cycle or whatever. It's that's something you want to fix and quick. And you might only have it in small degrees, like it might only flare up once in a while and that kind of thing. But and that's fine. But you can still just recognize that it's there, and maybe it's something that you need to lose.
Yeah, and I think when you decide you need to lose it, I think it can be like a light switch.
Yeah. Give yourself a little love. Tell yourself it's all right for feeling that way. And now that you've learned about it, maybe you can fix it.
Do they know what causes anxious attachment?
Being a douchebag, that's what caused it for me.
That is not what caused it.
Yes, huh? I was dumb. No, well, for me, it was through a past experience. It was through a past experience where my gut told me that something wasn't right with somebody, and then I'd tell myself I'm being stupid, quit worrying about that, and then they would tell me that I was stupid and that I was insecure and all these things, and then it just started. That was a really toxic kind of situation that I was in, and everything that my gut had told me in the beginning turned out to be true, and so then I developed this sense that I couldn't trust people or in relationships, and I just carried it with me. So if you've been burned, I mean, that is the worst possible thing that can happen, is that you could get burned. Somebody could go out, they could cheat on you, they could fall in love with somebody else, and they could leave you forever. That's the worst thing that could happen. And but you don't have control over that. The only thing you have control over is how you treat that person, how you treat yourself, and what you bring to the table in the relationship in a positive way. And you do the best things that you can do, and somebody still leaves, then is there a loss, and you're probably better off without them, to be honest, if they can't recognize you for who you are.
Yeah, and I remember during those years too, when you were accusing me, like, you weren't friendly towards me. You also were angry.
It's because you should have known why I was upset.
Well, and that's another thing too, like that whole mind reading thing. I couldn't figure out why you were upset, and then when you told me, I'd be like, "That's ridiculous."
The way I had it built up in my mind.
We just got pushed. That just started building a wall between us.
You were supposed to come home from a 2-week road trip
and blow you.
Yeah, full on.
And like be excited about it, like,
oh my God,
this is so great. I missed your penis so bad. That kind of thing, right?
Just got real dirty.
That's not dirty.
Somebody
that's
just got us the explicit symbol for this podcast. Thank you very much, Sam Cullinane.
This is why I have to wear the devil horns.
Well, that's a good one to end it on.
Because I kind of always want to bring it back to sex, and for some reason our society thinks that's bad, but it's not. It's not bad.
I was thumbing through all these different articles. One of the articles I read too, this is a big fail on your part, but one way that a significant other who's feeling compassionate, that understands somebody suffering from a little bit of anxious anxiety, that wants to try to help. There was a whole article written, and I'll try to find the.
Is it based on research, or is it just?
No, it's a research article,
okay.
And I'll try to find the. I'll try to find it for the fucking liner notes or whatever for the podcast. But it said that people suffering from anxious anxiety can be helped with touch. Boom.
Yeah.
So that mouth hug you were promising probably would have fixed everything. So that whole year apart is due to your failure.
I gotta be honest, I feel like that was the last thing on my mind. I'm so tired. I've been awake for 72 hours, and
just a quick mouth hug, honey, then sneak on upstairs.
That's all I'm thinking about.
All right.
Sorry, that's why I don't have the halo on. If I had a halo, then maybe I would have thought about that.
For those of you who are waiting the entire 30 minutes in this podcast for us to get to something dirty and funny, welcome,
we made it.
Yeah, congratulations for sticking with us. For those of you that bailed out because you thought this was a boring one, You're not even hearing what I'm saying right now, so who
Yeah,
cares?
they can't hear you.
Go
But
buy our book,
yeah.
dicks.
Hey, Justin, I hope you edit that part out. That's terrible.
Nobody will buy our book. Makes me real mad.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't make it any less great just because people aren't buying it.
I love our audience anyway. We got a lot of good people out there.
Exactly. You can't call them dicks. The people that are listening to this are not dicks.
Sorry, I got a little salty there. I didn't sleep very well last night.
All right. Well, should we sign off now?
Yeah, I'm done.
We love you, even though Pat called you dicks.
I think when
so inappropriate.
So you start calling your audience dicks, it's probably time to sign off.
Time to sign off. All right, everybody. We hope you have a wonderful week. And till next time.